Reality does not belong to what appears, what comes and goes. To contemplate what is it that is real in your experience. To come to that reality. You cannot spin and spin in the impression, in the mind. So if you have any questions, anything that you want to explore, I don't know.
So, I've been feeling a lot of discontent with everybody around me.
Discontent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the last week, I guess, and a lot of changes going on in my me life, I guess. And so I recognize that I have a lot of me concerns, and then I had this thought today that I want, because I've heard you say, want truth above everything else. And so then I had this other thought of wanting truth and wanting peace and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that the I am presence that says I want, like I'm recognizing the me, but then I guess what I'm trying to do is rise above the me?
Mm-hmm.
Is that I want peace, happiness, and truth? Is that the presence that
Mm-hmm.
wants that?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that the me that's kind of still?
Mm-hmm. When you are aspiring for happiness, for peace and happiness, you would not know what you are aspiring for if you did not already know it. So you know peace and happiness, and so you're aspiring for it. You say, no, I don't want that. I don't want this complicated way. I don't want this conflicted way. I don't want this troubled and worried way. I want peace and happiness. And what wants this peace and happiness is the recognition of peace and happiness within you. So when you come upon peace and happiness, you don't turn around and ask somebody, hey, am I happy now? You don't. You know, oh yeah, that's it. How do you know that's it? Because you already know happiness. When you come upon happiness, you know that you are at peace and happy now. Tranquil. So the aspiration for peace and happiness comes from peace and happiness itself. From the self, from our true nature. Our true nature wants to rise, wants to be recognized, wants to celebrate itself. And there are veils. The veils are those me impressions. As soon as there is a me impression, me and another, because the me arises simultaneously with the other, there is a sense of separation and limitation and unhappiness. And at the same time, there is a yearning for happiness. We cannot remain unhappy for too long. The brain, the body organism short circuits itself. It cannot stay unhappy for too long. The nervous system breaks down if unhappiness is sustained. And it's inescapable. The organism shuts down. But in the midst of tremendous unhappiness, often we find the way to happiness. There is a revelation that in the midst of all these happenings, I am untouched. All is well. But not just as a thought, it's revealed. Oh, all is well. I'm okay. A peek, an insight into causeless happiness and freedom in the midst of a preoccupied mind, an unhappy mind. So you're loving and you're yearning for peace and happiness, as you shared. It's a good thing. It means the peace and happiness that's been veiled for so long now wants to bubble up to the surface. You can trust that, celebrate that, follow that, trust that. Follow the path of peace and happiness. Trust it. There is no happiness tomorrow. And the mind, the preoccupied mind, is always thinking, well, I should do this and that in order to. But the yearning for peace and happiness is demanding peace and happiness now. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot be the peace and happiness of your true nature, and at the same time be concerned about you in the future. You don't mix tea and coffee and have it. What are you drinking?
I feel like I have a little glimpse of it, little teeny weeny.
Beautiful. So this teeny weeny glimpse of it is very precious. See, when you are in the forest and you are starting a fire, on the old days when they used to, before we had the electric way of lighting a fire, a teeny tiny spark of fire, we really nurture it very carefully, because that's the spark that catches the
So when you say that we're not a body-mind, what do we do with our mind?
It depends what you mean, but by the I, you say, what do we do? What do you mean by we? If you're referring,
constantly thinking.
If you're referring to I as an organism,
Yeah.
as a male or female organism, we don't do anything. We are done. We are not doing, we are being done. We're not the doer, we are the done. We are what is manifesting, we are not the manifester. But if you refer by I as consciousness, then I would say that what I as consciousness do with the mind, which I am doing, is celebrate, contemplate and celebrate, rejoice, enjoy beauty, love, wisdom, intelligence, peace, contemplate truth, wonder, W-O-N, wonder the dream, meaning live the wonder of the dream. Why not? I mean, this is magnificent right now, this very moment. It's magical, yes? It's magical. This is mind. You see, there is an impression in our confusion. There is an impression that there is a mind somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere inside, maybe my skull, or that there is a mind. But in fact, there is no such a thing as a mind. There is an oak tree, there is the bodies, but there is no mind. So what we refer to by mind, there are two ways of referring to mind. We usually refer to mind as the thinking, the conceptual realm, the mentation, thoughts, memories, and we say the mind. So we refer to mind as thoughts. But I think, as I said previously, I refer to mind in a more global way than just the thoughts. I refer to mind as thoughts and also perceptions and sensations. The entire phenomenal realm I refer to as mind. But this does not mean that there is a mind, something called a mind somewhere that you could visit. Never met a mind. None of us has ever met a mind. So by mind, we refer to I refer to perception, sensations, mentations, bodily sensations, world perceptions, and the subtle realm of thoughts and memories and images and so on. So what do you do with your mind? First, it's important that you realize that your mind is a universal mind. So it's universal mind, meaning your mind and my mind are one mind. The one mind, one realm. There is a mind realm, like in this forest, there's one forest. And in this forest there are oak trees and there are poplar trees and there are maple trees and pine trees and etc. But it's one forest. So there's one mind. In that universal mind, there are infinite forms. And they're all connected. The thoughts that are arising to you as awareness, are arising to me as awareness. The same thought, exact same thought, but it's at a distance. It's like when you go to the oculist and eye doctor, they call it oculist, yes, and you look, they put those letters at a distance, There's still A, E, D, B, C. It's the same letters that now they are closer to you and you say, oh, A, E, D, B, C, see? But when they're at a distance, you cannot read them. But they're the same letters. In some cases, there are, for example, the phenomenon of telepathy, being able to sense and read other people's thoughts. In science, they say, oh, these are exceptional people. But from the non-dual perspective, there are no exceptional people. It is just consciousness revealing in a flash its universality. And as the me impression reduces more and more, you will find more and more such events occurring. You'll be able to sense and just exactly what this other person is thinking, and then they say it, and you smile inside, because before they said it, you knew, you heard it before they said it. Anyways, I got off. I don't know what was your question anymore.
About what we do with the mind.
Yes, right. So the mind is it's like the electric current. Okay, there's an electric grid. The electric grid is bringing the electric current to all the light bulbs and all the fixtures and all the electronics and electrical fixtures in the village. It's a one grid, but there are different fixtures. Some light bulbs are fluorescent, other are neon, other are incandescent, some are electric stove, etc. Yes, but it's a one grid. Yeah? So your question is, what do we do with the mind? Is similar to the electrical current, the electrical grid, asking itself, what do I do with the light bulbs? You do whatever you want with the light bulbs. You want to turn them on, you turn them on. You don't want to turn them on, you don't turn them on. You know, a light bulb, one day it's working, you come next morning, it's gone. But the electric grid is not gone. This particular mind event, a particular body-mind is gone, but consciousness is not gone. So the grid, as a metaphor, is beyond the light. You see the light, you say, oh, this is, you know, a neon light or incandescent light or yellow light or white light. But you don't see the grid. You don't see the current. So you perceive this perception, but you don't perceive the perceiver. Right? You perceive this perception, you perceive a thought, but you don't perceive the perceiver. But what is the perceiver? The perceiver is I. I perceive, yes? I perceive a thought, I perceive a sensation, I perceive a meditation.
I find one of the things that shows up in satsang a lot is that seeing that the so-called mind is very programmed towards thinking something can be accomplished. And there's a great deal of positioning and moving around restlessly and so forth on the illusion that something is being done by this shifting around in your neurological patterns. And once in satsang it becomes so clear that you're not doing anything. Don't do anything. Just get out of the way of the impulse to do something. And that just opens up such a level of relaxation and freedom from this fairly pointless, churning. So, and thus you become free from contraction, etc. And you're just really invited to enjoy that.
Right. And there is noticing that all is done. Whatever needs to be done is done.
I just feel so liberating.
Yeah, it is liberating. All is done. So all events are impersonal. They're impersonal events. The impression of the personal impression is an add-on. It's after the fact, it's added on.
In this whole game, Navdeep, I think there is a necessity to get rid of this self-blame also, or self-guilt.
Yes.
Or say, take the ownership of the problem. I refuse to take ownership of the problem because it is not the fault of the body-mind, but it appears that it is the fault of the consciousness itself. Like what the bulb does, the lamp does, is because what the circulation, the electric circulation is doing, it is dependent on that. So I think instead of, seeing this duality between the consciousness, which is universal consciousness, which a lot of it is assumption also, when we talk about it from the level of body-mind, it is an assumption a lot of times. I think, letting go, staying where we are, helpless, like in an ocean when you are just floating without attempting to throw your hands and legs, you start floating. If you really do not put in a lot of effort and actually do not try to catch hold of the consciousness in preference to your body-mind, in fact, if you let go both consciousness as well as your body-mind, perhaps you will liberate. So I think the requirement for us is actually to stop constantly blaming our body-mind, because we are like we are. I was watching at the squirrels this morning. It does what it is programmed to do. It is helpless in itself. So we as humans also are helpless actually. And this helplessness comes from consciousness itself, not from us as individuals. So once we have this recognition of the incompleteness of the consciousness also, perhaps there is a way to liberate.
There is no salvation as long as you're a human.
As long as you
A human. There is no way for a human to attain moksha, to attain liberation. Liberation is the revelation of the universality of consciousness. In this revelation, the human impression dissolves in the universe, dissolves in God, dissolves in the Absolute, dissolves in the Self, dissolves in presence. And the impression of personhood is revealed to be complete transparency. It's revealed to be this borderless presence. But in terms of self-blame or blame others, or blaming others like you were mentioning, these sort of habits that we've acquired, some of us have acquired, some others, some have other ways of maneuvering around their unhappiness. They maintain the me impression. They're not helpful in relaxing the body-mind. Even self-blame, or you're blaming others, or sometimes we get away from an unhappy situation by other addictions. There are other forms of addictions besides blame. There are substance addictions, there are thought addictions, justifications, addictions, or blanking out is also a form of addiction. That some people are able to do that, of just sort of like a sort of denial or freezing the situation, but still a mind activity that is trying to preserve the impression that I am this body-mind, this human body-mind, at risk, danger. In fact, the body-mind is condemned to death, meaning to transformation, let's say. It's constantly in a state of transformation. It's constantly. In a way, it's really easy for us to see when we were 12-year-old, and now that we are 40 or 50, whatever, it's very obvious, because there was so many years in between. You can see the transformation of that little child or the young boy to this adult. But in a microscopic way, there's constant transformation. It's constant transformation. The thoughts and the emotions and the cells and the energy. And this body-mind is interconnected with the entire fabric. The fabric of everything and the fabric of this very mind are one fabric, interconnected via the grid, the entire. It's an intimate interconnection. Like gravity, the energy field throughout the earth, the iron core of the earth, and all that entire phenomena of the earth and the planets and our galaxy and its interconnection with other galaxies. All of this interconnection is an intimate interconnection with ourselves. The breath, the oxygen, the atmosphere, and the vaster space. So when we are referring to the human body, and we somehow separate something out of this whole, say, well, that's the human body. It's in a way an artificial separation, because the interconnection is there. Yeah? So the human body is really the entire universe. But it's the entire universe, as well as the human body as one. They have their reality in reality. They do not have their reality in the phenomena, in the phenomenal, in the universe. They have their reality in that to which the universe arises. Or if it's self-arising, then they have their reality to that whatever it is, that potential, that self-arising potential that makes the universe arise. And that self-arising potential, or that creates this universe, is what we refer to as consciousness, awareness. beingness, presence, the Satchit Ananda, the Satchit, the aware presence. Presence, the I am, and I am aware that I am aware. The Sat that I am, the Chit that I am aware, and I'm aware that I'm aware, as one. So, in contemplating the human body, it is important to contemplate what is the reality of the human body, and not just the human body events, their thoughts and emotions and all of that. Not just that, but what is the reality of the human experience. And there is no better place to contemplate what is the reality of the human experience than to contemplate this human experience right now. Because in a way, it's always right now, our contemplation. We cannot conduct a contemplation yesterday, or we cannot conduct a contemplation tomorrow. The contemplation, whenever we are conducting it, is being conducted right now. So what is the reality of the human experience right now? Which means, what is the reality of your experience right now? Or, another way of putting it is, what is your reality right now? What is the reality of what you perceive? What is the reality of the perceiver? What is the reality of that is perceived? And what is the reality of that perceives? Given that there is one reality, and we know intuitively that there is one reality, then the reality of that you experience, that you perceive, and the reality, your reality, the reality of that perceives, are one reality. And that reality is what we refer to as I, or as consciousness. I know I am. You don't need to ask anybody. You know, there is an intuitive, an inner knowingness. Consciousness knows itself, knows it is. You know you are, whatever that is. I'm not talking about a body, or you know you are. Consciousness is self-knowing. It knows it is, and it knows that it is conscious. You know that you are aware. You don't need to ask your mother or your father or your teacher. You know, yes, I am. Yes, I am aware. And you know that you're aware that you're aware. You're aware that you're aware. Consciousness is the reality of what we refer to as the body-mind, the world body-mind, or the human experience. And that, in consciousness, is what I am. And this consciousness that I am has no borders, meaning it is not contained. You could say it contains, but is not contained. But without necessarily going there, it is not contained. And the way you could test that for yourself is to ask yourself, given that I know that whatever is contained has a container, meaning I could say that the furniture in this room is contained in this room, and I can point to the walls, the ground, and the ceiling. I can point to the space, the beginning and end of the room that contains this furniture. So, but when you contemplate consciousness, meaning your knowingness, you know you are conscious, you can ask yourself, where does this consciousness start? Ask yourself directly this question, not by reciting what you have learned. Oh yeah, it started when you were born. No, from your experience. And your experience has to be right now. Or have you ever known a beginning of consciousness? Have you ever experienced an experience of consciousness? The beginning of consciousness. And you will find you have to conduct this questioning within yourself. You will find that no, I have never known the beginning of consciousness. You can ask yourself right now, there is consciousness, meaning there is awareness. I am aware. Where is this awareness? Can you say with certainty that the awareness is inside this room? You cannot say that with certainty. You could say that I'm aware of this room, meaning I'm aware of this image. But you cannot say with certainty that I'm experiencing consciousness inside. I know that consciousness is inside this room. No, it's the other way around. The room is inside of consciousness. Anyways, you have to conduct your own inquiry into that, to come to a clarity, not just a belief, an absolute, utter clarity within yourself, that I am consciousness, and that the consciousness that I am has no beginning, no end, has no gender, has no viscosity, has no density, has no color, has no weight, has no shape. And yet, it is undeniable. It is the reality, the uninterrupted reality of my experience.
Just to complete this, it appears to me, Nagji, that consciousness somehow requires. I don't know if there is an evidence that consciousness exists without body-mind. It requires the agency of a body-mind to see itself. So because of this relationship, I think a best approach for us is sometimes we can run into this trap of condemning our body and mind all the time. In a spiritual quest, we start condemning our body mind, and that also creates a lot of risk. Instead of salvation, instead of liberation, instead of revelation, we actually start becoming ridden with conflicts. So I really think that because consciousness needs this body-mind, but
How do you know that?
consciousness needs
How do you know that
to
consciousness
flip it,
needs a body mind?
to flip it, to see itself.
How do you know consciousness needs a body mind to see itself or to know itself?
If we flip it, what is the evidence that it does not need the body?
No, I mean, I'm not saying that it does. I'm just saying, let me put it to you the other way. What evidence do you have that consciousness requires a body mind to know itself?
Because as we are talking about consciousness because we have a construct called body mind. But we are not aware of a situation where consciousness is talking about itself without such a construct. We are not aware, but at least we are aware because we are individual entities here sitting here.
Well, you're assuming that consciousness depends on a body mind just because a body mind arises in consciousness. Because a body mind does arise in consciousness. You agree with that? That this perception of a body or the bodily sensation arises in consciousness. Yes.
Well,
It-
I mean, that could be a little bit of an extrapolation.
No extrapolation.
Because,
Just squeeze your leg right now, okay?
yes,
There is a bodily sensation, yes?
yes,
This bodily sensation is arising to you as consciousness.
right.
So the bodily sensation is arising in consciousness, and it is through consciousness that this bodily sensation is known.
Yeah, but this consciousness is going to go away when I
Well,
die.
when it's gonna go away?
Yes,
What-
the consciousness that I'm carrying is going to go away. I'm talking about.
Well, what makes you say that you are carrying this consciousness? Because when you say I am carrying this consciousness, when you say I, what do you refer to?
It is, I believe, what I'm trying to say, Magdi, is consciousness and the body mind, they are not separate. They are all one. Because they are interrelated. Even
Well, okay,
consciousness and body
to say that they're not separate is one thing, but to say that consciousness depends on the body to know itself, now that's not saying that they're one and the same. You're saying that there is a dependence. You see, for example, like I could say that the dreamer and the dream are the same, meaning the dream is made out of the dreamer. And the substance of the dream is the dreamer. They're the same. But to say that the dreamer depends on the dream, I question that. I would say the dream depends on the dreamer, but not the dreamer depends on the dream. See, so the body-mind, when you say the body-mind arises to you as consciousness, as a bodily sensation, as thought, as perception, as memory, as images. So the body-mind is known to you being consciousness. Because without you, consciousness, a thought wouldn't even be known. It requires you, consciousness. It requires consciousness. That without the consciousness, the thought wouldn't even appear. So it is via consciousness that the world, body, mind are known or experienced or arise. Via consciousness. So it's via the dreamer that the dreams, whatever the dreams are, there could be a multitude of dreams, a variety of thoughts, a variety of images, a variety of experiences, a variety of events. But it is via the dreamer that the dreams are known. And they dissolve they arise from and in the dreamer, and they dissolve from and in the dreamer. But the dreamer, using that metaphor, does not dissolve when the dream dissolves. So to say that the body-mind, with the extinction of the body-mind, consciousness will be extinct, is a topic of contemplation. And I would suggest that the body-mind is constantly appearing and disappearing. It's constantly in a state of change and flux. And I know that in our folklore, we have a big importance, we place a big importance onto the actual extinction of the death of this particular body-mind, this particular body. Say, okay, the death of this body is a big event. But in fact, this big event is made out of zillions of life and death events that are happening at the body-mind level, moment by moment. Every moment, every instant, there is a a death of the body-mind. There is a transformation, a change of the body-mind.
I think, yeah, you are right. Perhaps, it could be a little bit of a matter of semantics also here. But, trying to appreciate and understand, that's our goal here, usually.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it appears that actually both body-mind as well as so-called consciousness, they are dependent on something beyond.
It depends what you mean by consciousness.
There is a source from which this consciousness is arising, and that consciousness requires a body-mind to actually appreciate
it
itself.
depends. It depends what you mean by consciousness, because, for example, Nisargadatta refers to consciousness as still at the mind level. He refers to consciousness as awareness of the world, body, mind, specifically. So yes, if you're referring to consciousness as the quality of knowingness that knows the world, body, mind strictly and is limited to the world, body, mind and is not self-knowing, then yes, there is a higher level that knows the world, body, mind and knows itself simultaneously, which I think you could refer to it as the absolute. But I refer to consciousness as not only that to which the world, body, mind appears, that knows the world, body, mind, but also that is knowing, that knows itself as the absolute reality. So I am referring to the absolute reality that knows the world, body, mind, but also is self-knowing. And that does not forget itself. When I'm referring to consciousness, I'm not referring to a temporary consciousness that becomes extinct or that changes as the world, body, mind changes. Because there is often a usage of the term consciousness that still refers to world, body, mind events strictly, and therefore is dependent on the world, body, mind. Because as the world, body, mind dissolves, then that consciousness that is limited to the knowing of the world, body, mind will dissolve. So again, I refer to consciousness as the reality, the absolute reality, the reality of what is perceived, and as well as the reality that perceives. There is a reality that perceives. There is an ultimate knowingness, let's say. And this knowingness, this one knowingness, knows this world, body, mind in its freedom, and is the ultimate knowingness, is the knowingness of all that can ever be known beyond world, body, mind. In other words, that knows itself, that is self-knowing.
Or maybe it does not even need to know. Sometimes it's when it is at its highest level, even the knowingness is after it.
Right. The knowingness at that level is an actual beingness. It's not really a knowingness like in the conventional sense. It's more of an absence than a presence. But what really matters in the pedagogy, in the teaching, is to come to that experience, because there comes a level of understanding that defies language, that can no longer be expressed but in the silence.
technique?